Apostolic churches today, you walk in some of them, there's more beards in there than there are out in the street. I'm going to tell you something. Facial hair is not apostolic. However you want to cut it, it's compromise. I don't care if your leader says you can wear a beard, honey. Beard's nothing more than pride. You're not going to be dipped in Holy Ghost oil and run around looking like the world.
I used to go to churches like that when I was a kid. They just make up all kinds of nonsense. Imagine shouting, "Facial hair is not apostolic," and trying to keep a straight face, knowing full well that most men in the Bible had beards, probably Jesus, and probably all of the apostles. And the crowd cheers. Yeah. That little bit was from a visiting preacher. I think his name was Stephen Buxton at the First Pentecostal Church of Arkansas last year. When I talk about terrible preachers, false prophets, and bad theology, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Well, this is just a small, but hopefully easily understood example. A lot of my experiences were pretty good, and I liked, and still do, a lot of the people that I went to church with. I also like trying to be somewhat separate from the world, especially the degeneracy of society. I believe it's important to live in a principled manner by setting standards, personal standards, and not just going along with every trend. However, there's a problem in churches, especially of this type, which are more concerned with a made-up appearance of holiness rather than real character as revealed by actions. In these kind of churches, people just follow and even cheer for whatever silly nonsense the leader makes up. And the funny thing is, I've heard this topic, although it's kind of obscure, not a mainstream view, that beards are sin. Preached a bunch of times. And I know the logic they use. I don't want to be unkind, but it's dumb. Look, I don't even want a beard. It doesn't matter. It should not be such a big deal. And I know lots of other silly, non-biblical, not really Christian standards too. But I'm trying to be brief, so I'll stick with this one example. It's not worth explaining in detail, but briefly, the man of God, self-proclaimed, didn't like hippies or hipsters or their beards or whatever, and has that personal preference as a standard, then imposes it on his followers and says they're sinning if they disobey him, and then they will go to hell. That's the basic logic of it. I say, by the way, it seems kind of arrogant to call oneself the man of God, which is also contrary to the humility that the Bible requires of preachers. Anyhow, the big trouble comes sometimes when it goes beyond silly stuff like this. And after a while, followers don't have the courage to stand against gross violations of their own individuality, or even talk about it. It's almost to be expected in such a high control situation that it may escalate gradually from petty nonsense like that to extreme abuse. And it can even become degeneracy. Even if it doesn't get that far, I think that focusing so much on petty standards, which are not even Christian or biblical, is at least a red flag to watch out for. A sign of excessively high levels of control by the leader over their followers. I think it might even go against the Great Commission, Jesus' mandate to the disciples to go share the gospel and save people. The gospel should not be unnecessarily complicated. Preachers should not make up a bunch of nonsense that pushes people away. I know many people who quit going to those kinds of churches over silly stuff like that, and some who quit over more extreme problems, as I've explained previously. Some get into better situations, and some much worse. Of course, a church leader can apply his personal preferences to his business, and people can choose to be part of that, but I recommend leaving those weird controlling people behind. Get out of those groups. Think for yourself. Read the Bible and figure it out. It's not that difficult. 20 minutes a day, in a year, you'll have read it all. Or just find better leaders, better churches, or even find your own way. I mean, whatever you do, move on. Beards are not apostolic. Until later.